You know that feeling when a conversation leaves you slightly off balance, like something shifted, but you can't quite explain what. Nothing obvious was said, no argument, no clear conflict, and yet, hours later, you're still replaying it, wondering why you feel smaller than you did before. What's strange is how easily this gets dismissed. People might call it overthinking, or sensitivity, or just reading too much into things, but that explanation never quite fits, because what you felt wasn't random, it followed a pattern, even if no one ever named it. There's a certain kind of dynamic that creates this effect, and it's rarely talked about in a way that actually matches lived experience. When people think about control, they imagine something loud or obvious, but some of the most powerful forms of control are quiet, almost invisible, especially when they come from someone who knows how to shape perception without ever appearing to. This is where narcissistic behavior starts to look different than people expect, not as constant arrogance or grand gestures, but as subtle psychological patterns that slowly shift how you see yourself. Research in behavioral psychology often points to how human perception can be influenced through inconsistency and emotional ambiguity. The brain, especially the part responsible for threat detection, doesn't just respond to danger, it responds to uncertainty. And when something feels unpredictable, the mind tries harder to make sense of it. That's where certain patterns begin to take hold. A compliment that feels slightly backhanded, attention that comes and goes without explanation, moments of warmth followed by distance. None of it is extreme on its own, but over time, it creates a kind of internal instability where you start relying more on their signals than your own sense of clarity. This doesn't happen because someone is weak or easily manipulated. It often connects to something much deeper. The nervous system is wired to seek connection and predictability, especially if early experiences involved emotional inconsistency. When attention feels uncertain, the brain doesn't pull away, it leans in, trying to restore balance. What looks like attachment can sometimes be an attempt to resolve that uncertainty, and this is where judgment usually gets in the way. It's easy to label one side as manipulative and the other as naive, but human behavior rarely fits that cleanly. These patterns often develop from learned ways of relating to others. For some, control becomes a way to feel secure. For others, adapting becomes a way to stay connected. Neither is inherently better or worse. They're just different responses to different internal experiences. What makes this dynamic difficult to recognize is the paradox at its core. The more you try to understand what's happening, the more you can start doubting your own perception. And at the same time, that sensitivity, the part of you that notices subtle shifts, is also the part that sees what others might miss. It's not just a vulnerability, it's awareness without a clear framework to hold it. So if something about this feels familiar, it's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that your mind is trying to make sense of patterns that were never clearly defined. And the fact that you noticed, even without the language for it, already says more than it seems. There are more layers to this than most people realize. And once you start seeing them, certain interactions begin to feel different in a way that's hard to unsee.